Hi, and welcome to Conversations with Money. I'm Sarah McCrum, and today I'm in conversation with Amira McHugh. I met Amira maybe a couple of years ago. I think that the work she does is really fascinating, and is going to give us an insight into money that most people couldn't give you. So, Amira, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and what kind of money environment you grew up in?
Oh, where to start? Well, firstly, thank you for having me. But I guess the money environment I grew up in was I actually was born to teenagers, and they had come out of a difficult situation in their families. So they didn't have anything at all. And I grew up in a place where money, there really was not enough. And there was fear all the time. There was anger. Um, and we definitely had some unpleasant things happen. And I think that I took that on as a not having enough money was responsible for those things, because if there had been money, then maybe there would have been better treatments available and, support and all of those type of things. But then there wasn't. And then as I got a little bit older and my parents split up, again, we still had no money. So we had to go live in caravans on my grandparents' backyard, which I was humiliated. So money for me, I kind of got obsessed as I got a little bit older in understanding how we feel about money and why we feel it and what we can do to change it, given how we grew up and all of those stories that we've taken on based on what we saw and we experienced. And I'm sure, as you know, it's a horrible feeling to have nothing. It is scary. It does weigh on you. It's a terrible way to live. It's not inspiring at all.
I
But
totally agree with you. And sometimes people will try to tell inspiring stories about it, but it's actually the gritty reality of it is that it's a lot of stress and a lot of worry, and it causes a lot of unhappiness.
and it stifles your life pretty
Yeah.
much. So I became obsessed at that point because I wanted to know what I could do to do things differently. So what you asked what I do is I actually teach people how to create spending plans. And so that is looking at what you do have. And we use some fancy software, but it's more about the steps. Where do I start in what I've got, and how can I do more with what I do have?
I
Um,
imagine that a lot of people, even the very idea of a spending plan would feel quite challenging and maybe like, oh, I'm not even sure if I want to go there. Do you find that?
Absolutely. Well, of course, it's equated to budgets. I've got a budget, which means I have to give up stuff, which means I'm going to suffer. I don't like the icky feeling. I'm too scared to look at my money. What if I notice that it's worse than I thought it was? Um,
It's probably really.
so many different feelings and thoughts going on there. But I think really deep down at the very heart of it, everyone knows that if they don't have some sort of financial plan, they're not going anywhere very fast. So I think
So
that you know it, but you just don't want to have to deal with it.
yeah, I would say that that's very true. Before we started recording this conversation, you were talking about the fact that there are patterns that you see over and over again in people's spending, and that it doesn't matter whether they're making 100,000 a year or 30,000 a year. You see more or less the same patterns, and I'm willing to bet that it would be the same at $1 million a year. Um,
I'm sure it would be.
yeah, can you tell us a bit about the patterns you see? And I'm kind of willing to bet that some people might squirm a little bit when they listen to Amira talking about this, but perhaps that squirm is the indication that this is something to look at rather than something not to look at.
Yeah, well, the biggest things that I see are that people will spend excessive amounts when it comes to, say, takeaway food or Uber Eats, maybe online shopping. So all those little trinkets and stuff. I'm going to say the majority is food, whether that's I spend $300 a week on groceries, but yet half of them probably ends up in the bin anyway. And I'm still Uber eating or Deliveroo or whatever it is, or the takeaway food. That is the biggest one. And if you look at it, you go, wow, have you ever added up how much you're actually spending in this area?
So what do you think is going on in people's heads if they're spending so much on food? Presumably they're not really wealthy enough to spend that much on food.
You know what? Some of them could quite easily Uber Eat or take away once or twice a week, but probably not to the volume of how often it is being done. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I don't feel good. I've had a stressful day. I deserve it. Don't I deserve it because I'm tired? And so really, I really do believe it's changing how you feel. Like it's changing your state. So now you order the food, it arrives, you get all this little like happy, little. It's like a treat. I feel special. I deserve it. I'm worth it.
I didn't have to cook. Somebody else has cooked for me.
I eat the food, and then we come to the second bit. Is I'm probably eating the food in front of the television as well, binging on the many TV subscriptions that I have.
So that's another part of the spending.
That is, some people have up to like 10 different subscriptions. You're like, you have time to watch all of those. But yet, when I say, do you really need like all of them? Which ones do you watch the most? There's this like really huge resistance to getting rid of the ones that you don't even watch because I would miss out. But like, you do know that you could just, if you decided there's something you wanted to watch there, you could easily just go and, go back online and go, please sign me up for Stan again. They'd have you back in a heartbeat.
And they'll have you back if you just do it for 1 month and then go off again. You can do that, and that doesn't cost much.
No, it doesn't. And it just adds up, and you've got your $10, you've got your $22, your $32. And you've got like 10 of them, right? So what is this really costing you? And then the TV, of course, I'm sure this has been talked about, and it has been by many people, that then you get to sort of numb yourself. You get to live in somebody else's world and not be concerned with how you feel anymore.
So you're really seeing through the lens of the way people spend money, you're kind of seeing into their life, aren't you?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe that's why they're like, oh, do I want to talk to you? But there's also a lot of justification as well. Oh, if I do this, then won't that make my life better? Well, has it up to this point? You keep repeating the same thing over and over. And typically I see this a lot with people who want to start a side hustle, or their own small business. I want to get away from my job and into my own business. I'm just going to keep buying all of this stuff. And you go, okay, so who are you going to sell this stuff to? I don't know. So you're really doing it to start a business, or is it just a justifiable reason to be able to buy stuff that gives you that little dopamine hit and makes you feel better for a little bit? So
what's the answer?
Well, the truth is, it's just I'm giving myself a good reason to say why I'm spending money.
It's interesting because I think probably in my world there are people who I probably do genuinely want to start their own business, but can easily get lured into courses and
Yes.
web hosting and all these other expenses that are legitimate when you have a slightly more mature business, but they're often sold right at the beginning, because often people will come along and say, well, I've got a bit of cash, so now I can invest in starting my business. And I think they invest in all the wrong things. And they'd
Yes.
be far better investing their time and energy in talking with people and finding out what people really want and making connections with people than investing in software that then keep them locked behind their screen for 6 months or a year, sometimes preparing websites and business cards and stuff that are obsolete by the time they finish them.
That's right. And then comes to the next part, is the spending on online courses that never actually get completed. Or it's very exciting in the first week or two, but and as you said, I know people who are not in business, but yet somehow they've paid $2,000 for a business course. You're like, what?
But what does this really say about us? Does it say that we know somewhere inside ourselves that maybe being able to do business is good, but we don't have the follow through? Or like, because why would you choose to buy a business course rather than go and buy some clothes, for example, or go and buy something for your bike or whatever, whatever your thing is? I'm wondering if behind that there is some inner knowing, maybe, there's a vulnerability around making money.
I think that when it comes down to it, it seemed like a really good idea, and you talked yourself up into, I'll be able to do this. But then it comes down to, well, am I really capable of this? Am I really worth it? It's probably not going to work out anyway. I'm going to go and default back to what I already talked about. And that happens a lot. So and now I'm going to go and make myself feel better.
That's sad, really, isn't it? Because people are making themselves feel better because they're not able to stand back themselves to achieve what they would like to achieve.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a lack of education, there's a lack of support, there's a lack of culture in a way. Like, our culture very easily supports people to spend money. It doesn't easily support people to invest in themselves. It supports them to spend on themselves.
Well, as I often say, in those credit card ads, they show you all these wonderful things that you can have, but they don't show you having to pay back the credit card bill and how you're going to feel when you're doing that, do they? And it's just a really vicious cycle, because it's so easy for us to spend, and you need this, and this is going to make you feel better, and then I'm going to start my own business, or I'm going to progress. I'm going to do some personal development. Don't get me wrong, I'm really big on personal development, but how many courses can we do at once? We kind of need to do it and finish it, and then it doesn't work for us. We feel bad. Then we go, oh, look, that didn't work. I've spent money. I feel bad. I'm going to go and, distract myself some more. And I'm going to feel guilty. And then when we get into the guilt and to the shame, it just goes round and round and round. We have to find
the worst
some
place
way
to
stop.
Yeah. Oh, and I feel very proud now. I had somebody who came along the other day and she said, I've bought so many online courses and I've never finished a single one of them. And I've done the whole of Thank You Money, which is my course, which is a whole year long. It's like a really full-on course, the whole thing. So I'm feeling exceptionally pleased with myself now.
You should, because it is really something that people do spend a lot of money on and buy into, because it sounded so glamorous, and you'll be so much better. You've heard the stories of somebody who had nothing and now they're a multi-millionaire. That's going to happen to me. So they don't tend to show you all the really hard work that went behind all of that.
Yeah, and the downs that happen, the stuff that happened probably long before they became a millionaire, often years.
And all the things they had to give up. They don't talk about all the things they had to give up. you know, all the money that they siphoned off here but didn't spend on, you know, luxuries or eating out or any of those things. I mean, some people are truthful and tell you about the extraordinary credit card debt that they worked up trying to get there. But often we just hear I was here, not much of the middle bit, and look what I got. So
Yes.
I don't think it's very honest.
Yes, it's interesting because I've seen people talking about, you know, how you can get to $100,000 a year, and I passed $100,000 a year, and I thought, oh wow, I could have gone and taught a course like that, but I didn't really feel qualified to, because just because I've done that doesn't mean that I can show other people how to do that, because there's so many variables and there's so many different types of people. So I think it is also very easy to say, oh, you know, I've got this thing, but that thing isn't terribly valuable yet. I prefer, if I'm going to teach something, I prefer to teach something where I've really built the value around it, and that it's really a strength, not something. I tried it. I did get there. You know, how much could I be really sure that somebody else would be able to get there too? And that's what I see with lots of people. I see people who bought these courses, and then I had one the other day, and she said, well, the course says that I now need to send an email to these people and then I'll start making money. And I knew that that wasn't going to happen. It's like, it's totally obvious that that's not going to happen. It's so disappointing. So look, you could easily become cynical and jaded and rather disappointed in the poor state of humanity. I don't get the sense that that's who you are.
No.
So both in terms of overcoming your own childhood and what you learned from your parents, and in terms of not being like your clients, what have you done, and what have you found is really useful in terms of managing your money?
Well, one thing that is not very fun is the living to payday to payday. So when I first started, geez, I don't know, it was about maybe 16, 17 years ago. I owed a lot of money. I went into business. I didn't really know what I was doing. And surprise, surprise, ended up owing a ton of money. At that time, GST came in. And so it wasn't there. And then, you know, the GST came in and it was a little bit confusing. So I owed the tax department a ton of money, plus suppliers. And I remember kind of the moment was my daughter, I needed to get her a birthday present. And all I could do was scrounge up like $30. And that was an effort. And I just thought, this is not right. I don't want to live like this. I don't want to bring my children up like this. I want to know that when the electricity bill comes, I have the money. I don't have to worry about that. So I wasn't aiming for being a millionaire or any of those type of things, right? I just wanted to stop living payday to payday because it's not a pleasant place to be. And I wanted to have some savings as well. So I started to, you know, work with, there wasn't any spending planners yet. So we worked with some life coaches, started reading some mindset books, which I didn't actually know that was a thing. I didn't realize that you couldn't be angry and frustrated and look at what you don't have and actually get what you want. I didn't realize that. So then it was like a step-by-step process. I closed the business. I went and got a job. I had to try and figure out what skills I had, because at that stage I also had a child who had a disability, and that's really all I had no certificates or degrees or any qualifications of any note. I have plenty of them now, but I didn't have any of them then. And so I was like, what could I do? So I went and got a job as a carer, and I started paying back all the money. And for sort of like every dollar I paid off, I also saved. and I made sure that I could pay electricity bills and regos and all of that sort of stuff. And then I also found this software system that we use that kind of, it creates a bank account in advance sort of a statement. So you can actually, instead of waiting till your bank statement comes, and then often people will sit there and go, oh, I have to notice what I spent and I have to put it in my spreadsheet. Well, it's too late. It's already gone. It makes no difference. What you need to concern yourself with is, what are we going to do going forwards? What's that going to look like? How much do I need in my bank account? And how am I going to be sure that it's there in time? You know, you can have $1,000 in your bank, which is great, but if you need $1,500, it's not going to help. You know, and that's often when people end up with more credit card debt, when, you know, regos happen, washing machines break down, all that sort of stuff. And then it was just basically about learning to sort of quieten my own fears and my own anxiety around spending as well, because there is that like pleasure of, if I just go buy something, I get that little hit, you know, the thrill, the little dopamine hit that makes me feel good, until I feel guilty about what I did or until I realize I can't pay the bill down the track, you know. And yeah, so that's pretty much how I got started, and I just kept going. And for me, it's just been really important being able to show people that it's possible. And it's not about these monumental things that happen. It's small action, small amounts of money, regularly saved or not spent, that makes the big difference. So often we think we need a windfall or something, but we don't. We just take these little amounts and we put it away often, so we don't really feel it. And then before you know it, you're like, well, how did I get $5,000? Well, because that money got spent on food normally, do you know what I mean? That you didn't notice.
So is that what really changes for your clients?
It's, how did I have all this extra money, but I didn't actually get a higher income? And often you'll see people say, well, I don't know how it happened. I just did what she told me to do. There are definitely some strategies that you can put in place. And once they're in place, it does make it simple, and it does mean you don't have to think about it too often. So it's just a process to get you to that place, which you do need to sit down and focus on that to get it done. And then it's pretty much, they can work on automatic pilot a lot of the time.
It's kind of fascinating, because it makes me realize how many stories we spin in our heads around money that are really not true at all. And what you're talking about is very simple in a way. It's facing reality. It's facing numbers that are already there. It's not facing an unknown reality. You're actually dealing with the known reality. I know that next month or in 3 months' time, I'm going to have to pay for my car registration. I know my council tax is going to come. I know my this tax or my this. So it's a very pragmatic thing that you're talking about. It's just kind of getting real, isn't it?
It is, but it's also having a system where you know that those things are coming up and you can easily find out. Instead of, normally what happens is that thing arrives in your email or, you know, in the mail, and you go, oh, I forgot about that. It's about knowing that that's going to come up. Yes. You know, without having to go rustle through papers and emails and stuff. It's just knowing that, and knowing that I need to have this much in my bank account by then, and that I'm on track at these, you know, various intervals. Oh yes, I'm on track for that. Yeah.
So that would work at any level of income, really, wouldn't it? Because people with bigger incomes have a lot bigger expenditures as well. So it would be exactly the same thing. And
can we then, on that note, tackle a little bit of a myth here?
Sure.
And that is, That is that people who earn less or who have low incomes are bad with their money, and they're the ones who need support. Often, when you don't have much at all, you have to be very careful, and they manage what they have very, very well. It's really as we sort of move up the income scale that we go, oh, well, that $20 doesn't matter, that $30 doesn't matter, or that won't make any difference, until you realize you're doing it 10 times a week. And really, that's like adds up to $10,000 a year. What could I then do with the $10,000 a year? But someone who's living off $30,000 a year doesn't do that.
So they don't have the luxury. They actually can't.
You're not eating if you do that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for dispelling that myth. I think that's actually very important. I'm curious, given that what you're doing is very, very organized and very sensible and very pragmatic. I know that you've read my book, Love Money, Money Loves You, which in a way, it doesn't talk a lot about all that stuff, although it certainly doesn't deny financial organization. And especially, I think it's very strong on financial responsibility. All the way through the book, I always feel it's never recommending credit card debt or anything like that. But I am curious what you made of it and how that fitted with the things that you see in your world.
I loved your book. And as I told you when I got it, I read it in less than 2 days. I could not stop reading it. But you did actually talk a little bit in there about financial planning. Well, managing your money. And also, if I am correct, about respecting money, like that money basically stays where it's respected and managed well. You know, we often talk about, I want more, I want more, I want more, but you can earn. And on that note, how many times has somebody got a raise and it hasn't made any difference at all? Because I believe it's called, something about spending creep. But basically, it's called lifestyle creep, actually. What happens is you just start spending more. So you don't actually make any significant difference with the increase that you get. You just spend more to match how much you earn now. So you definitely did talk about that. So money, while we want more and we want to attract more, we really do need to do the best that we can with it and respect it and show respect and put it to work for us.
So I think respect is a really interesting word here. If you see people who respect money and then you see people who don't respect money, can you describe the difference between them in their behavior and their outcomes?
I think having respect for money is going, okay, I have a certain level of money and I am going to basically treat it well by going, let's assign you to go here, here, and here, right? And it's also about paying attention to it, because often we want to bury our head in the sand. We don't want to look at our bank statement. We don't want to go check any of that out. But if you want money to work for you, you have to pay attention. You have to go and look at those things. Am I on track? Am I not on track? Is there something I could make an adjustment? You know how we talk about planes going from, they take off and they land in a certain city, but they're off track most of the time. It's not really much different than that. It's just going, oh, hang on, that bill was more than I expected. Oopsie, I better make a little adjustment here. And a little adjustment, not huge adjustments, little adjustments, so I can bring myself back on track. And then we've got the people who don't look, don't want to know. I'm just going to keep spending. We're talking significant debt. It just gets bigger and bigger. And we're not talking about being happy. So often there is the fear of, if I limit myself or if I go on a budget or spending plan, whatever we want to call it, and restrict myself, I'm going to be miserable. And I like to just spend my money. I earned it. I want to spend it. It's going to make me happy. But I would really ask you to look at, is it really making you happy? Is it making you happy being fearful about if you're going to have enough? So only the person can answer that question. If you're happy, then that's okay. But if it's really keeping you up at night, and I've had people who said, they were fearful of something happening to a family member. I said, oh, so are they sick? Are they, older? No, they're in their 20s. They're healthy. They're well. I'm not sure I understand where the fear is coming from, but it was the fear of how would I pay for their funeral? So anyway, I'm going to start talking about, okay, but, does that person have their own superannuation plan or any of those type of things? Or yes, they do. Well, guess what would pay for the funeral? You don't need to worry about that. Often we construct these stories in our heads that keep us up at night, cause us anxiety, cause us to not be present with the people that we love. And this actually is a new thing that came to me, that we go about looking to create more money and have more income and, have this better lifestyle so we can be present with the people that we love the most. And I was like, hang on a second. How about we just be present with the people that we love most right now? It's kind of the shorter route to doing it, But we often get trapped in this, I have to be better, I have to be more, I have to do this, I have to do that, so I can have this lifestyle, which is actually right there and available for you if we stop trying so hard.
I love the way that you talk because it's so straightforward. It's just like, look at this and see it for what it is. And you see straight through all the stories that we tell ourselves in this very unassuming way.
There's a lot of stories.
Well, yes, but probably everybody can feel a little uncomfortable. I'm thinking, oh yes, maybe it's easy to think, no, I don't really do any of that stuff. It's like, oh well, maybe I've got my own signature, my own flavor, where I can think, well, I'm different because I never get takeaways and I never do this, but maybe I have my own way of doing some of those things.
You know what? And even if you are like even myself, a spending planner, of course, I have my own things as well that I have to deal with. It's just being human.
But I think the point that you're making, and I've learned this in business, I think better than personally, actually, the point that you're making is that something happens to us psychologically when we have accounts that are growing. And that spending mentality really means that you constantly see money comes in, but you always see what's going out. And if you have an account that's growing because you're putting money into it, you're saving, or I use in business, I use the profit first system, which means that I'm putting money into another account for profit. I also put my tax money in there and things like that. Something happens when you, especially in a world where there's a lot of spending that has to be done, like in a business, where if there's an account that's growing, it actually makes you feel quite different inside yourself. So I think that what you're talking about is really fundamental, because it's about giving ourselves the sense of expansion, growth. And people say, well, you can't grow the economy forever. But there is a way in which we do genuinely want to grow things. It's very natural.
And well, as humans, we're not happy without progressing. So just what you're talking about is you're just making progress. You're seeing these little bits add up and up and up, and then you know that you can, pay your GST bill or any of those type of things, right? And you're not worried when the time comes, how am I going to do that?
Yeah, because I see that a lot of people have a windfall mentality. And I remember there was a time when I definitely had a windfall mentality. It's like, if a big bill comes, the money will come and I'll be okay. And in a way, it was true, I was, but it was not an easy way. I remember when I realized, all my bills I know that I'm going to be able to pay them. I don't need to worry about the bills because I've got to that level where I know that they're going to be taken care of. That's very different. Like windfalls are great if you do need one. It's better to have a windfall than not to have one, but it's a very difficult way to live relying on that. So I don't like that lottery mentality at all. I really want to encourage people to be sensible.
If you think about it though, if you're trying to create a windfall from an anxious, from starting from being anxious, it's not really easy to do, because you're trying to overcome the anxiety and settle yourself down so that you can try to create
And
those.
it's extraordinarily difficult.
It's a lot of energy. And I mean, you're
Yeah, it's
talking
extraordinarily
mostly about
difficult to do.
energy.
Yeah.
But I love so many things in your book, Sarah. It was just so many things. Like the idea, there was this one in particular I wrote a blog about that, you know, if you weren't in the pursuit of money, would you even bother getting out of bed or leaving the house? That was just something that really stood out for me. So it's like, hang on a second. This pursuit of money really is what, you know, led us all to learn more skills, to get out, to meet people, to network, to, you know, to do a whole bunch of other things that without it, would we have done anything? Would we have just sat there and, you know, just, I don't know, seen the same people, done the same boring things? I mean, isn't it something that we expand and we grow and we go and meet new people and see new things and experience you know, new opportunities through that pursuit of
It is,
money.
yeah.
Yeah.
And perhaps especially if you see it as a pursuit of abundance, which I think is a very natural thing to want to experience, or a pursuit. I often think of a rich life, not rich just how much money have I got in my bank account, but actually having a rich life. To pursue that brings so much benefit in so many different ways. That I feel that we're very called for more richness in our life and for more, for a kind of whole holistic wealth, if you like, rather than a very narrow definition of wealth or prosperity. There are different ways of looking at it, and that is a very natural thing, and that cannot come at the price of your relationships. Like if you can't be present with your family, you would never say I have a rich life or I feel really prosperous. You would feel like, oh, I'm missing something really important.
Yeah.
So yes,
it was a big eye-opener for me, that was. And
interesting.
and also your idea of fun, you know, the idea of being open and you know, free and having fun and doing enjoyable things. I remember that was a bit of a light bulb moment for me, going, have fun? I don't schedule in fun. Isn't it meant to be all hard work? So that's changed my perspective on it. No, we have to look at self-care. We have to look at, you know, fun and enjoyment, because they are important things. We can't just take all the pleasure out of life. We have to go and do those things to have rich, full lives as well. You know.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Amira. As always, when I talk with you, I feel really kind of just like, oh, I've just been given this real dose of fresh air, clarity, simplicity, straightforwardness, and honesty about money. It's very refreshing. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you again, and it's been a pleasure talking to you.